Over the past several weeks, I've been quietly listening to conversations among experienced civil rights attorneys. Conversations about deliberate indifference, qualified immunity, municipal liability, discovery, experts, probable cause, affidavits, damages, settlements, exactly the conversations you would expect. But I also noticed something else, not because people were talking about it, because they weren't. I almost never heard anyone stop and ask a remarkably simple question. Before we discuss whether police training failed, what exactly is the police training system we're talking about? Think about that for a second. The phrase failure to train appears throughout civil rights litigation. It's familiar, it's well established, but even with being familiar, it can sometimes hide a deeper question. Failure of what? A class? A policy? An instructor? A lesson plan? A training record? Or something larger? I'm not asking that as a legal question. I'm asking it as an organizational one. Because over 25 years in policing, I came to appreciate something that has stayed with me ever since. Police organizations generate enormous amounts of training documentation, lesson plans, attendance rosters, policies, curricula, state mandates, annual certifications, and those documents are vital, very vital. But I've never been convinced they automatically define the institutional training system they are assumed to represent. Those are two different ideas. And I wonder if we've become so accustomed to using a phrase such as failure to train that we sometimes move directly to analyzing the evidence before defining the thing we're actually analyzing. Maybe that's why conversations often begin with the incident, the police incident. Then the officer, then the policy, then the training records. All of that makes sense. But I sometimes find myself wondering whether something else is sitting quietly underneath the entire discussion. Not hidden, not secret, simply undefined. What is the police training system? Not the documents, the system. Can two people describe it the same way? Can it be articulated independently of the records generated by it? Can it be distinguished from compliance documentation? Can it be described as an institutional function rather than a collection of courses? Those questions interest me, not because they answer every case. They don't. Not because every police department operates the same way. They don't. But because defining the object of analysis often changes the conversation itself. I've noticed that many discussions naturally focus on decisions made during the police incident. That's understandable. Incidents are where constitutional questions become visible. But every incident also arrives after years of organizational preparation. Years of institutional decisions, years of educational choices, years of assumptions about how police officers are expected to learn, perform, adapt, and exercise discretion. Those institutional choices exist long before anyone writes an incident report, long before litigation begins, long before someone asks whether training occurred. So here's the question I've been thinking about. When we say failure to train as a collective society, are we all talking about the same thing? Or are different people using the same phrase to describe entirely different concepts? I don't know. That we've spent enough time answering that question. And perhaps that's because the records are easier to discuss than the system they may represent. A training record is tangible. A system is institutional. A record documents activity. A system describes organizational function. Those are not necessarily the same thing. And recognizing that distinction doesn't accuse anyone of anything. It doesn't suggest misconduct. It doesn't presume liability. It simply recognizes that institutional systems deserve to be understood on their own terms. Because if the system itself remains undefined, then conversations about its success or its failure may never begin from the same place. That's what has captured my attention. Not whether a document exists, but whether the institutional function behind that document has ever been clearly defined. Maybe that's why the conversation sometimes feels incomplete. Not because anyone is asking the wrong questions, but because one foundational question may still be waiting to be asked. What exactly is the police training system? Not the paperwork, not the course catalog, not the compliance file, the system. Because until that question is answered, we may all be using the same words while describing different things. I'm Tom Loglisci. Thank you for listening to Police Praxis Audio Briefings.